It is the raw, biting cold of January 17th, 1940. The air over the Bavarian plains is sharp and still, tasting of pine and wood smoke. Inside the cavernous, vaulted hangars of a Luftwaffe test facility, the air is warmer, thick with the scent of high-octane aviation fuel and freshly milled metal. Mechanics in crisp gray uniforms swarm like worker bees beneath the sleek, predatory shapes of the Messerschmitt Bf-109 and the elegant, new Focke-Wulf FW-190. These machines are the unchallenged apex predators of the European sky. Here, in the heart of the Reich's burgeoning air power, an air of supreme, almost untouchable confidence reigns. General Lieutenant Ernst Udet's vision of a devastating, lightning-fast aerial force, a true Luftwaffe of the future, is a terrifying reality. In the mess halls, over thick German beer and plates of hearty bratwurst, the talk is of swift victories, of French obsolescence, and of the inevitable, rapid capitulation of the clumsy, isolated British. The war is still young. It is a war of calculated risk, of precision engineering, and above all, of arrogance, the belief that German technical prowess and disciplined airmanship are an insurmountable advantage. Their planes are swift, beautifully engineered weapons designed to dispatch an enemy with surgical efficiency. They carry fast-firing cannons, light but deadly, built for the tactical dogfight, a duel of skill and quick maneuvering. Historical context. This hubris was not unfounded. In the opening campaigns, the Luftwaffe had swept the skies clean. Their aircraft, especially the Messerschmitt, were sleek, light, and focused entirely on agility and speed. They embodied the German philosophy of warfare, the decisive, swift thrust. As the war progressed, their engineers looked across the Atlantic with a mixture of pity and dismissive amusement at the early American contributions. The first reports, the technical specifications passed through neutral channels and captured documents, painted a peculiar picture of the upcoming American fighter. Its designation, the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt. The numbers were staggering, almost comical. A weight that bordered on the absurd. A fighter, but one that weighed more than many twin-engined bombers of the era. To the German mind, steeped in the doctrine of light, nimble air superiority, this flying barrel was an embarrassment. Its engine, the enormous Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp, was a powerhouse, yes, but its size dictated the plane's girth. It looked less like a precision instrument of war and more like a monstrous, overfed farm animal. The pilots of the Jagdgeschwader, the elite German fighter wings, shared the joke. They called it the Jug, short for juggernaut, but used the term with derision, a heavy, ungraceful thing that would surely be outclimbed, outturned, and outfought by the graceful Focke-Wulf. They expected an easy kill, a slow, heavy target, one that represented the clumsy industrial might of America, a plane that was all brawn and no brain. Emotional contrast. What the Luftwaffe aces expected was a continuation of the clean, decisive aerial fencing they had mastered, a clash of highly skilled individuals in lightweight, responsive mounts. They expected a quick, sharp engagement, a burst of cannon fire, and the sight of an inferior machine spiraling earthward in flames. What they actually found, when the P-47s finally entered the fray in force over the occupied territories and then the German heartland, was a fundamental, terrifying shift in the very nature of air combat. The Thunderbolt was not a duelist. It was a battering ram. The shock came not in its maneuverability. It was, as predicted, a beast in a tight turn, but in its indestructibility and, more profoundly, in its firepower. The first engagements baffled the Germans. Their carefully aimed bursts of 20 mm cannon fire, which would shred the lighter wings and fuselages of British and earlier American fighters, seemed merely to annoy the P-47. The The massive engine acted as a superb shield. The sheer mass and rugged construction of the airframe absorbed hits that would have destroyed any Messerschmitt. Pilots who had successfully engaged and damaged a Thunderbolt watched in disbelief as the heavily smoking, crippled aircraft simply kept flying, often limping home across the channel, when by all rights it should have exploded. The laughter died in their throats as the P-47s began their attacks. Historical evidence and symbolism. The German design philosophy was focused on efficient, high-explosive cannons, 6-shot kills. The American philosophy, exemplified by the P-47, was one of brutal saturation. The Thunderbolt did not carry a cannon. It carried 850 caliber Browning machine guns, 4 in each thick, slab-like wing. The M2 Browning 50 caliber was an industrial marvel, a weapon designed for reliability and a devastating rate of fire. When all 8 of these heavy machine guns fired simultaneously, the resulting sound was not the focused thump-thump of German cannon. It was a searing, continuous roar, a sound like a giant tearing canvas, a solid sheet of incoming fire. The Germans gave it its own name, Der Rasenmäher, the lawnmower, for the way it would chew and tear apart whatever was in its path. This sheer density of fire represented something deeper than just a tactical advantage. Each barrel, each round, was a manifestation of the American abundance. While the Reich's industrial output struggled with shortages of key alloys and materials, often having to compromise on armor and armament to save weight, the P-47 was a weapon of almost reckless over-engineering. It was the physical embodiment of the unconstrained capacity of American factories. The recurring symbol became the empty brass casing, thousands upon thousands of them tumbling from the wings of a diving P-47 in an oily golden cascade. A single Thunderbolt could unleash 1/600 pounds of lead per minute. A flight of 4 could saturate an entire airspace, turning the air itself into a lethal metal storm. German pilots, trained to husband their ammunition and use short, precise bursts, were overwhelmed by this sheer, unforgiving volume. A direct hit from this concentrated fire did not just damage an enemy, it disintegrated it. A wing would simply cease to exist. An engine would be pulverized into scrap. Oberleutnant Erich Rudorfer, one of the Reich's greatest aces, later documented the unsettling experience. They did not shoot. They merely pointed and held the trigger. It was not a duel. It was a hose of lead. It hit everywhere at once. You could not dodge the volume. You could only hope to fly through it. The Thunderbolt, therefore, was not merely a fighter plane. It was an airborne conveyor belt, delivering the unlimited capacity of American democracy, its factories, its resources, its unyielding material wealth, directly into the teeth of the enemy's perceived technical superiority. Transformation, the initial laughter, was utterly and permanently replaced by a chilling respect. And finally, outright dread. The appearance of the P-47, often flying high, its silvery skin gleaming in the sun, meant that the terms of the fight had changed. The German fighter pilot was trained to seek the dogfight, the low-altitude turning duel. The P-47, however, had one other devastating, overwhelming advantage granted by its weight and its immense engine: dive speed. The Luftwaffe discovered that once a Thunderbolt rolled over and pointed its nose down, nothing could catch it. It accelerated past the red line of any German equivalent, becoming a near-invincible force of gravity and metal. The pilot's ideology that the skilled individual in a nimble machine could defeat any number of heavy, clumsy foes was shattered. The war in the air transformed from an aristocratic duel to an industrial slaughter. They learned a new brutal catechism: never challenge a P-47 in a dive. Never fly in a straight line for more than a few seconds in its presence. The perception changed. The P-47 was no longer a joke, no longer a jug to be mocked. It was the Juggernaut, they had half-jokingly named it, an irresistible, heavily armed force that represented a vast, implacable enemy whose power was simply not comprehensible within the rigid, resource-constrained mindset of the Reich. It was the first deafening sound of a different kind of war, one where abundance would defeat scarcity, and mass production would overwhelm precision engineering. The sky was no longer their clean, elegant battleground. It was now a lethal, unpredictable rain of American-forged, half-inch diameter lead.